Right, so again, welcome everyone. Tonight we'll be talking about how to write a background statement, root cause, and problem statement. And as I was mentioning to Deirdre earlier, I'm very excited about this session because as a business analyst, this is one of the challenges that I usually hear, not only for me, but also for my colleagues. So I really look forward to get as many insights as I can. And to all of you, I encourage you to pay attention to the session because at the end, I'm going to ask you a simple but succinct question. So let's get started. My name is Bacerra. I'm the president of IIBA Hamilton Chapter, and I'll be your moderator for tonight. As you know, technical issues can happen. So if I get disconnected, the whole meeting will end. So please give it a few moments and reconnect using the same link. If, on the other hand, you get disconnected, please join back when you're able to do so. The meeting is being recorded so that you can refer to it later. As you know, your participation is valued, so all your mics are muted, but we encourage you to participate through the comments and questions feature or using the reaction button. Also use the raise hand feature for any technical or pressing issues that you may have. The agenda for tonight is, as you can see here on the screen, first our welcome and introductions. Now we are going to move to our Babok tip. In every meeting that we have, we provide a tip from the business analysis body of knowledge, and it's usually according to the topic that we have. Then we'll jump into our speaker session and Q&A, and we'll finalize with a couple of announcements and closing remarks. Okay, so the Babok tip for today is an understanding of the audience is beneficial to effectively use written communication. Presenting information and ideas requires selecting the correct words so the audience will understand the intended meaning. So this is very aligned to what we are going to hear today. So you can refer to it on our Babok on chapter 9432. Okay, so without further ado, let me introduce the speaker for tonight. Her name is Deirdre Caren. She is the founder and director of Agora Insights. She has several years of experience as a business analyst and has supported the life of many business architects and analysts. She has trained about more than 5,000 people. She is a certified architect and a certified business analyst professional. And we are very happy to have you here tonight, Deirdre. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you so that you can start sharing your screen.
Okay. Well, lovely to see everybody. And I can definitely see a few people that I recognize here. So let me start by sharing the screen. It's going to take a few minutes. Now, please put up your hand if you have any questions, because it's an interesting topic, and I would really like, I'd really like it if you feel involved. So although your sound is off at the moment, put your hand up and let's have a discussion around this, because it really does require its own discussion. All right. So firstly, can everybody see the screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, good. So I want you to imagine yourself a little bit differently today to what you would normally do. So today I want you to think of yourself as an investigative journalist. So not your typical business analysis role, but rather somebody who's working in the organization or in the role of a journalist. Now, as you know, business analysts are essentially change makers. So the role is often about how do we move the business from where it is today to where it might be tomorrow. And this role in itself requires a lot of crafting of ideas and crafting of understanding what is happening within the organization. So the field of business analysis itself develops a framework and a guide to help people achieve a particular goal, and to help, set what that change might be. So I'm going to introduce you into something that we call the knowledge brief. So your knowledge brief, if you're an investigative journalist, you would think of this as your toolkit. So the knowledge brief is a tool. It functions as a simplified version of your business requirements document, or your BRD. And as you know, BRDs are helpful, but they can also be quite outdated very quickly. And so what we did at Agora was look at what are the things that you need to cover when there is a change project, and how would you cover these things? I just want to quickly add a couple of people in there. So if you're thinking of yourself as an investigative journalist, the knowledge brief would essentially be your tool for researching, collecting information, presenting your findings in a way that's clear and concise. Because for those of us who've ever written a business requirements document, which certainly isn't the most exciting thing you'll ever do in your life, it's often not read by anybody, which is one of the most depressing parts of having a BRD. So I'm going to take you through the first 4 key areas of what we call the knowledge brief. And these 4 areas are around your background statement, how to write a background statement. So how to set the scene in the change project that you're doing. We're going to look at the problem or the opportunity. So what are the tools and tips? We're going to look at critical success factors. What are measurements? What does critical success look like? And we are going to look at root cause analysis. And there's only so much I can do in 1 hour or less than an hour. So we won't be able to cover every single aspect, but like I said, please just, ask a question if something isn't clear that I can help assist you with. And yes, there will be a copy of the presentation after the event that will be sent through to you. Anyway, before I go there, let me just go to the next one. So we're going to start off with the background. Now, I want you to think, as this investigative journalist, how would you frame it? Now, one of the things that I learned at one of the companies I worked with, that if you can write your story, your newspaper article from the beginning, how would you frame the project that you're working on? So we're going to play with this idea a little bit. So when you're writing your background statements, the background statement is, as I mentioned, very similar to a newspaper article. Firstly, you want somebody to be able to understand what the story is about. So what has happened? Who did what? What are the consequences? What was, what led to us wanting to have a solution? It's also really key. So if someone is a good journalist, they write something worth reading, firstly. And I say that a lot for BAs. I say for architects to write something worth reading, draw something worth looking at. So with any good piece of journalism, you will need to understand what is the background. And here you don't want to put in your personal views of what has happened. What you do want to do is you want to be able to give the story. So, if you're watching a movie, you want to understand the story. What are the characters, how they're built? And for BAs particularly, you want to ensure that you have qualitative and quantitative facts. So you want to make sure that you know enough insight about the person and the characters you're dealing with, but you also want to give some statistics. So, you know, how did this come about? So how often did this happen? You know, how was it structured? And I'll take you through an actual example, but I just want you to think of it in this particular way now. So all of this information that you gather in to create your article, and the article almost happens like after you've gathered this information, but all this information that you gather in to write your article should have a frame that gives the sense of neutrality. So you are providing this information, but you're not, you know, leaning. And this is why I say good journalism. You're not leading the audience to a particular outcome as yet. So when we are doing a project, we want to understand what it is that we are doing today, or what is the background to set up for why we're doing the change tomorrow. And so these are all really important factors to consider. So now I'm going to take you into what I think is a slightly more boring, you know, conversation, but let's have a look at what this might look like. So we're going to take a scenario, and this scenario is a company, and I want you to watch carefully because I'm going to ask you a few questions after this. This company is a New Zealand company called Property Plus. It's all made up. So whatever you want to do with it. And this company was founded in 1992 with the vision to not merely achieve growth and profits, but to make a worthwhile contribution to the development of our cities and great country. So Property Plus has a long, proud history of creating places that meet the needs of customers and communities, currently employed over 900 people in 40 locations, and it continues to expand. So you can imagine yourself now, if you were looking at how would you write the story about a particular organization, there's lots of things you're looking at. So you're looking at, okay, a little bit of their history. You want to know, you know, what's the scale of this particular organization. And then you would say, over the years of expansion, Property Plus has managed its financial data and reporting systems. These systems have increased across the group. Let me just find this, sorry. These have increased across the group. And as a result, the company reporting is now done on mix of outdated technology platforms. So you can imagine now they've got all these different companies, they've all these different groups, they're in different locations, and they've been capturing their data in all these different systems. So this is not unusual to what most businesses go through. And so they're using platforms like JB Edwards, an inventory and reporting system. They also bolt this onto things like MS Access and MS Excel spreadsheets. So what the company is looking at, this part of our background, is recently a project was implemented, a new CRM system to manage leasing and sales that provides a modern interface operating via corporate intranet. And the CRM system interfaces with existing finance and reporting systems to build data as the old systems remain the source of truth currently. And as this all contains a whole new set of data developed to improve the management of the retail community. So you can see where I'm going with this. It's not super exciting. As I said, it won't be the most exciting. This is a typical background statement. Now, how do you know if this is a good background statement or not? Does anyone want to give me some feedback? I don't know. Are you able to comment? maybe not. All right, let me give you a few tips. One of the things that you can do as a BA, and this is such a simple tool to use, and this is just simple analysis, is you can start breaking down what is the story. So the first thing that I want to highlight is that it's given you a list of facts to work with, which is incredibly important. So as you go through the project and you write your background statement, as I said, you're an investigative journalist and you're pulling through the facts of what occurred so that people understand why we need to change. What do we need to change? It doesn't have to be long, but it has to lead somewhere. So it has to take you on this journey from who, what, when, and why. And as it takes you through that journey, we can now start building requirements even now. And that sounds crazy because you think, well, I've only just done a background statement. How can I build a requirement already? But what you do as a BA, and this is simple coding that, we did when we studied years ago, when you have to study all these different things and you take a pen and you highlight them different colors, similar type of thing. So what we would do is we would start doing some document analysis. So as we are gathering the facts, and remember, you won't be able to write a background statement at the very start. It's not possible because you have to interview people and you have to at least know who you're working with in that particular space. So what you will look at is you will look at breaking down into specific areas. Now, in the knowledge brief, we have high-level requirements that you should target, such as reporting data systems and particular stakeholders or people that you'll be looking at. But you also need to understand what are the pain points, what's the need of the organization. So as these conversations are being written, you want to understand what is meant by that background statement. So like I said, think of that, who, what, when, why, as you go in writing your background statement. Now, when you're analyzing your background and when you are writing your background, you can do a little test. So do you have the need? So have you identified, what it is that the business is trying to achieve? What are they about? When you write a good background statement, you should be able to pick themes that keep the conversation consistent. So for instance, if I read just the purple, currently employing over 900 people with 40 locations, Property Plus continues to expand. The department has built reporting solutions to cater for each of their own needs, causing issues across the group. So can you see, we can create several user stories, we can create several business requirements, we can start to use our background statement as a frame on what we will need to do. So some tips, as I mentioned, if you are going to start highlighting themes that are occurring in your knowledge, not your knowledge brief, your background statement, then you need to be able to actually read just those bits as well. So just like you would hear, financial data and reporting systems as a result of the company reporting is now using bolt-on reporting aggregators. So this is so simple, but it really does help you understand if you have covered all of the aspects and then going back to discovering what your requirements might be, your high-level business requirements. So we know some things, like we have data requirements that we will need to build into our high-level requirements. We have system requirements that we're going to need to have as part of the change. We have reporting requirements. and we have our stakeholders, and then our pain points. These are really problems that we want to solve. So these are important things to understand when building your background statement. You do not build this, like I mentioned, first time round. You want to gather as much information and build it and keep it short and sweet. You should be able to write a background statement in something that you can fit onto a short presentation slide. You should be able to, or a simple newspaper article, you know, something that's very simple to use. And if you do it well enough, make it a news article. So make it look like a newspaper article. And so once you've started gathering that information, you frame that information, you set the scene for the project, and you then look at what that change might be. Please, if there's any questions, please ask. All right, so next we look, let's just go back to the knowledge brief and just do a little bit of a recap. So to sum up, the background statement is the first step in creating your knowledge brief, but that doesn't mean it's the first thing you'll do. But it does help frame the situation. It's based on facts, it's based on data. It includes value inputs, so things, words that would add value to that reader. It doesn't offer your own personal opinion. It offers a collective view of the situation that has occurred. So it outlines what the business needs and what the business change is. So it provides the framework. Such an important component. And, you know, when we talk about the Babok Guide in chapter 6, we talk about strategy analysis. And this is really at the point where you would look at bringing in that background statement. We also talk about in chapter 2, your backham, which is around framing your thoughts, the context, the people, the need, you know, the problem, etc. So all of that is so important when starting your project. And I do recommend you just use this in your project, and you just use every slide in your project to frame it, and you keep changing it and you keep improving it, and you use it dynamically. Next, we'll look at the problem statement. I just want to keep tabs on time. Okay. So a problem statement. So inventor Charles, I can never pronounce his name correctly, Kettering, famously said that a problem well stated is half solved. And this holds true for us as BA. So again, as an investigative journalist, the first step is to be able to define what the problem is. You want to know exactly what is it that we're dealing with. So in projects, you sit in a situation where people say, oh, yes, we just need to upgrade this because, you know, this is what people want. And we've all agreed that we need to, you know, improve all of our CRM services, or we needing to update all of our reporting. But, you know, what is the problem that we want to solve? Now, let's separate a problem statement with a general problem conversation, because the two are not the same thing. A problem statement should expressly define what it is that you want to solve. So as part of crafting our story, and as being good investigative journalists, we want to take what we've understood from the background, and we want to formulate a problem which explains what we're dealing with. So why does this matter? So why is this a problem? Why are we doing this? for instance, if you've got a leaking tap, you understand that the problem is that somewhere in the root of all of this, the water is not being contained. That's the truth of it. That's the root cause. Water is not being contained. And why is that a problem for you? Well, there's many reasons that it could be a problem, like you're wasting water, or you don't have enough time to manage, the water systems, or it's having an impact, or maybe it's dripping on your head at night. There's many reasons, but the problem for the dripping water on your head, the problem is not that water is dripping on your head. The problem is that water is not contained. And there's a very big difference between saying water is dripping is the problem. No, that's the consequence of water not being contained. And we need to understand that difference, particularly in digital, kind of enhancement projects. There's often the statement that says water's dripping, but no, that's the consequence of water not being contained. So using a problem statement is going to, I'm just going to give you an example here, is going to help you, sorry, just open that. It's going to help you frame where you want to go. So the problem statement is really key in handling your stakeholder buy-in. It's critical in ensuring that the project is action-orientated and solution-driven. It needs to be clear, accurate, and deliver specific results. So in your problem statement, precision is the key point here. Be precise. I don't want to know that water's dripping on your head. I understand that that's a real pain point, but that's not the problem. And so you have to be precise. A problem statement that is inaccurate, that's incomplete, that's poorly crafted, will just lead to ineffective solutions that will waste time, money, and resources. Now, the problem statement that you are looking at the moment, you could argue that it could be improved on. In fact, you can argue everything that I've written can be improved on, and you should. But obviously, for the sake of a 50-minute presentation, we'll keep it quite simple. So if you look at this, so the problem that we're trying to deal with is that there's a large team managing multiple systems and databases. I want you to look at the color codes. We've started to pull in the background statement, and we've started to write a problem statement that is going to help us frame what we're trying to solve. So large team in financial department, there are multiple systems, databases. And look, I like to read by color. Using complex Excel spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are becoming unstable, and the ability to access data and drill down to the accurate is obviously no longer happening. So again, your problem statement, you should be able to find very particular points and reasons. This takes time. Everything about writing a background statement, everything around defining a problem takes time. And there's many ways in which we can define this problem. In fact, this one needs quite a bit of improvement. And I encourage you to challenge me once you get the presentation to come back and go, actually, I would have written this slightly differently. I would have taken, with that background, gone and said, this doesn't give me the critical success factors that I need, which is going to be the next part of our conversation. So just going back to your knowledge brief. So we've spoken about, obviously, the first part was your background. Part 2 is your problem or opportunity. Now, I didn't quite mention around the opportunity. Not everything is a problem. And when you're looking at opportunities, you almost have to follow the same formula. So that's an important component. When you look at opportunity statement, an opportunity statement is, let's say you're a business and you're looking at your competitor, and your competitor has got this great idea, and you're like, oh, actually, we could do something similar, maybe not quite the same, but that was a great idea. Or let's just say there's a new innovation and you've suddenly realized, well, you could have done that innovation. So opportunities would be framed the same way. In other words, you'd still have a background, but you would frame it that tells you why the thing matters, or why you would be doing this. So I use it interchangeably. Most of the time, a problem statement, and I use the term statement because it needs to be boom. Most projects start with a problem that they want to solve, or a need that they want to solve. But if you are an entrepreneur, you might see opportunities and have a similar type of approach. Or maybe one of the business units come and say, hey, we really got this great idea. We've had these customers ask us all these things. So how will we manage that? Yes, Chris.
Hi, thanks for
Yeah.
having us here. Anyway, so this your problem statement. How long did it take you to write it, and how many iterations did you make? How many iterations did you have?
So for training purposes, I write it really quickly.
Okay.
But in real life, you would have to write it with a BA team. So you would have to do a very short investigation into your main stakeholders and what your strategy is. And you would have to almost develop like a case. And you would have to first discover quite a few things. And in my experience, we've had at least 8 iterations of a problem statement. So you think you've written a problem statement, and then someone goes, but this doesn't make sense. And you're like, okay, we start again. So typically that you could expect approximately 8 iterations of a problem statement.
Okay, thank you.
And this is why it's also important that a lot of BAs know about this. So being able to craft that well is so important. All right, so step 3. Critical success factors. This is Deirdre's personal bugbear with many projects. I speak to myself as a third person. We don't measure things. We're analysts. Let's measure stuff. So when you are writing the critical success factors, now remember, critical success factors, it's kind of like a scope, but it's not a scope. So let's not confuse it. Let's just call it critical success factors. What are we measuring? So now we know a bit of the background. Now we know a bit of the problem. So how would we know if we are getting anywhere? I had a boss that I worked with approximately 10 years ago. Really lovely guy, very strict, very much a stickler for getting things right. And he always said to me, whenever we came up with a solution or we came up with a requirement, he would say to me, how do you measure that? It drove me nuts, drove me absolutely crazy. But I've never forgotten it. And I now teach it to other people. If you're going to write a requirement, if you're going to write a background statement, if you're going to write a problem definition, how do you measure that? If you're going to have a project that you're delivering to, how do you measure that? So measures have qualitative and quantitative associations with them. So, and this is not the same as project. Please understand the difference. So a project is something like, how many resources do we need? You know, what is our budget? What is our, I don't know, time? You know, how much time do we have to do this, etc. That's a project budget. So you're building a house. How much do I have on my budget? How much, you know, how long is it going to take for me to build a house? And, you know, what are the resources that I need? So do I need a plumber, a builder, etc. But when you want to measure your house, when you want to measure what you want your house to be, you want to say, I want a house that's 250 square meters. I want a house that, you know, has great airflow, has great, you know, let's say windows, and it's double glazed. Those are measures. I know that at the end of the day, my house is going to meet these particular requirements. And so when we write problem statements or background statements or requirements, we should, and I'm talking business requirements now because it's high level requirements, we should have an associated measure with that. So how would you measure that in this Property Plus process, for instance, how their reporting has improved? Now, if you're going to be migrating multiple systems from, you know, one area to another, you have to have start a measure. So how often do we run these reports? Okay, we run these reports once a month. So in the future, how often do we want to run these reports? Okay, we want to run these reports daily. Okay, so now we have a measure. Now we know what we're doing in our improvement. So remember this, with high-level business requirements, every component of your requirements has to have a measure. I'm not talking about, I know you do acceptance criteria and testing when you talk about stakeholder requirements and user stories, and that still must go on, but you need an overarching measure. If I don't say how big I want my house to be, I might end up with this tiny little batch, or I might end up with a mansion, and I'm going to be paying for it either way. But it's better to know upfront what you're measuring against. So, all right. So essentially, your critical success factors define, they're the bullseye of your target in your specific areas. So particularly your requirements, where you want to end up, how you're going to solve your problem. That really targets what you're doing. These describe the elements that are necessary for project success, and set the standards against what success can be measured with. So if you hit the target dead on, you'll know that you've been totally successful. If you've kind of missed the target, then you'll understand your lessons learned. I don't know how many people have been in projects before where they go, oh guys, let's do our lessons learned, but there's no measures to start off with. So how do you know that you've done a great job in your project? So it's important to understand that. So even if you don't hit the bullseye, it's okay, because we still need to work through that. Now, I want to ask you, why is this a bad project goal? Can anyone tell me?
How do you measure world class?
Yay, Ray. Good job, you. Yes. How do you measure world class? What does that mean? Nothing. It means nothing. It's fancy words that are unmeasurable. Same thing, interface seamlessly. What does that mean? So you can write this great background statement, you can write this great problem statement, and then you can say, hey guys, this is what we're doing. And actually, you can't measure it. So interfacing seamlessly, you've got to be more specific than that. Okay, so our critical factors, what do we mean by world class? So we know that that's part of our, that theme has come through the program, but world class financial reporting is, it's too vague. So you would have to say things like reporting that is delivered within 5 minutes of request. That would be a accurate measure of what the reporting expectation is. Using a platform that is accessible to all 5 of these business units, and you would list the business units. This platform would interface with these, 5 systems within a response rate of X amount of seconds. Let's use that. And would cross multiple platforms, CRM, JDE, Microsoft Suite. So that would be a measure, because now you can say at the end of this project, did we achieve those results? So did we get a 5-second reporting, whatever we measured, on every single one of the reporting requests that we received? And that would be how you would write your critical success factors. So even if you don't meet the targets, you still know how you did. You still know how big your house is. You still know, that you actually are delivering the components of that house. We're not talking about the builder's time, budget, or resource. We are talking about, what does the house look like? What does it look like at the end? So some really important things. So specific, measurable, that's critical success factors. Then, all right, part 4. So root cause analysis, and I'm watching the time. Root cause analysis is really difficult, but it's essential. So, and actually, sometimes you have to almost do this in the beginning. Now, if you're an investigative journalist, and I'm taking you back to that persona that you can put on, you kind of want to nosy around a little bit first, right? Why do we do things like that? How did we end up in this particular place? And you will find that building your background statement, your problem, and your critical success factors don't happen at once. So, as you keep going through your project, you'll keep updating and improving your statements, your problems, your critical success factors as you start diving into the root. So as I said at the very early stages, that, the problem is not that there's water dripping on our head at night. The problem is that we don't contain our water. Very different in the way that we write it. So the way that we understand why is the water not contained is using a method called root cause analysis. So it's helpful when you think of yourself as an investigative journalist to go, what has happened? Why did it happen? How did it happen? And using a tool to help you with root cause analysis is really helpful. So simply, if we had to explain root cause, it's that whole thing. You can solve the problem at the very top. Yes. Do you want to ask a question?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to know that do stakeholders understand what problem they're dealing with, or they just know the symptoms and BA, they come in and they actually point out to the problem? What most likely is the situation in most cases? Thanks.
Yeah, the latter is most likely the situation. And this is why I use the sample of a dripping tap, because we know that most people, if someone said to you, oh, the problem is that there's water dripping, you would think of that as a problem statement, right? But when I say the problem is that water isn't contained correctly, then you suddenly go, oh, yes, that's obvious. Now, so when you look at stakeholders, most people would just go to the water's dripping. And so this is where BAs really do need to learn how to ask the question more appropriately, so that it, kind of helps with that. So the second part.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's several things to consider when you look at root cause, and there are multiple techniques that are described in your BABOK, and especially one of the techniques is actually in your chapter called root cause. So chapter 10 of your BABOK guide, and it discusses several ways in which you can do root cause. And I'm going to give you an example of that now. But what I want you to understand is, if you only deal with the tip of the iceberg, like if I chop off one piece and I go, oh, this is too high, chop it off, all that's going to happen is the water's going to keep rising. It's not going to go away. It's still going to be there. So this is the thing, we sometimes use the tree to say, if you look at the root, and it doesn't always have to be only one root, it could be several roots. If you look at the roots, you'll start to understand why it's behaving in that particular way. So the starting point for a root cause analysis is to look at the problem statement and really just try to define that a little bit better. If you only focus your efforts on eliminating the tip of the iceberg, you fail to address what's at the base of the problem, and it won't be long till the whole problem perpetuates again. All right, so there's many types of techniques that are discussed in BABOK. There's one called the appreciation inquiry, which is a nice way of going, can you explain to me what's happened here? Probably less popular, but it also has good options. And typically an appreciative inquiry would be, I think, I've used it several times. It actually does work. But you would use it in a case like, let's say you've got a group and you want to open it up questions and brainstorming without pointing fingers. This is a good technique to use. There's the 5 whys. I'll give you an example in the middle in a minute. Of the 5 whys, there's also a drill down technique where you can take one part and you can just break down that part. So it's like if your car is broken, they have to go right through to find where that broken piece is. In the analogy that I use of the the water is not contained, you'll have to go through that whole path to see where the water is not contained. So where is that leak coming from? Where's the root of that? And then you got cause and effect diagrams, which are also really helpful. That's one of the ones that are in the BABOK guide, and it discusses the various aspects of that you could consider. And remember, I said there might not only be one cause, because there might be a trigger event that could cause multiple problems. Now, problems are not issues. Please remember that as well. An issue is something that we know about. A problem is something we don't know about. So an issue might be we didn't get to do something on time, but we understand it. Whereas a problem is something we don't understand. And sometimes these are used interchangeably, but they actually have very different reasons. So in project, issues occur as we're going through projects. They're not problems. But when we start a project, we typically try to solve a problem. So we should have that defined. All right, so we have fishbone, we have 5 whys, and these are the 2 most common ways of doing root cause. So to give you an example of what that might be, we have, this would be, well, it's 4 of your 5 whys. I just couldn't fit, I just couldn't fit it into the screen. But so if we look at our property plus, and this was done by one of the learners in our course. So if you look at the property plus root cause, so there's new data sets are only held in CRM system and they're not passed on to old systems. So why is this happening? So then you would say, well, the team that built the CRM were only contracted to build CRM. This is all made up, by the way, because the whole case that I'm talking about is fictional, but I'm just giving you an example. And when the CRM team evaluated the cost of adding these fields to the current systems, they indicated to complete this task will take a huge amount of time, so they didn't proceed, and so forth, until you get to the root cause, which is the processes, the data logic, maps, data dictionary, all out of date, and deliver and differ from one location to the other. And this is why it ended up like that. So a problem statement, you'd have to break down all of the elements and you'd have to ask yourself why. So in the dripping tap, which is the issue or the result of the problem, you would have to go back through that full piping system to find out what is the root cause and why did that happen. Because remember, we've got to find out, okay, this is the place, let's say that the tap caused the dripping. Let's say there was the pipe was old. But we might want to know, why did that particular pipe degrade? So was there a reason for this? And that's when you would do the root cause. So the first part of the problem is framing it correctly, which is not to say this drips onto somebody's head, but to say the water isn't contained. That's framing the problem. And the second one is to go into that problem and go, where is that problem? Why did this occur? So that you can manage that. So that is essentially, looking at the time, the 4 key factors when you start in a project. You haven't even put in the user requirements yet. And if you, we do this for each of these stages when we go into the next stages, but that's not in our discussion today. But as you start a project, this is the first thing. You're the investigative journalist, you're putting all the pieces together, you're creating background statements. And remember, we don't write an article one time. It takes a lot of information and putting it all together to write this article. And once you've done that, we then work in the change. So what are we changing? Who's involved? What's the current state? What are our high-level business requirements? Decompose into our stakeholder and our solution requirements. What is our future state going to look like? And because we've got all those measures, we can actually then measure our design against our critical success factors. I put in here financial estimation. Often BAs don't do that, but you could do other types of estimation, like the value for the stakeholders. So how valuable is the work that we're doing to stakeholders? So will it improve our reputation? Will it improve, let's say, the experience? So if everyone's complaining about the reporting, will they be happy at the end of the day after you've done this? So there's multiple ways of measuring value. And then this, once you've done all of this as a BA, this is where you can have the biggest impact. And I say this so often, if the business analyst doesn't, if you keep saying to people at all these different stages of the project, oh, we should do it like this, or oh, we should do it like that. And it's hard not to, because sometimes it's so obvious, right? So if you are explaining to people at all these different stages what it is that they could do better and how they could do it without having like the full article, it's not going to have the same impact. But if you want to really influence change in your organization, get your article written properly and then say, hey, based on all of what we've just discovered, this would be my recommendation. And this is where you have the most bang for your buck as a BA and being able to influence. So yes, that's me. There's a very quick description of all the things you need to know.
I wish we had more time, Deirdre. There's a lot to cover for sure, but thank you very much for all these valuable insights. I wonder if anyone in the audience has any questions, any concerns, any doubts that Deirdre can help us with.
I see James put up his hand. Oh, maybe not.
Okay.
Oh, Chris. Yeah.
Right, so what if you walk into an organization where they have already started a process to solve their problem? How do you convince them to let you start this whole process of writing an article to actually know if they're on the right path?
That's very difficult, Chris, because as we all know in practice, once things get signed off, it makes it quite challenging. I would advise BAs to do this anyway, because things will happen during the project, and it's best that, at least during the project, you can refer back to certain things. What are the measures? How are we doing this? It takes time for people to understand what good business architecture is. And if you are coming in late, you also don't want to make people feel stupid or like they've done something wrong. So you have to be very careful about these things. But if in the organization you understand what a knowledge brief is, and this is part of the training that I did at the City Council, and they all use knowledge briefs now. So when they start their project, the first thing that they do is assign the BA to do a knowledge brief. So if you could get to that point, it would be great. Practically, you might have to just hold back a little bit and maybe just train people initially what a knowledge brief is, rather than try change the project itself.
Makes sense. Thanks.
All right. If there are not any other questions, before I jump into the following steps, I would like to ask you, what did you learn from today's presentation? That was the question that I told you I would ask at the end. So if you can briefly write in the chat, what did you learn today? That would be great. And in the meantime, I'm just gonna share my screen, Deirdre.
Yes, go for it.
Okay. All right, so I hope everyone can see the screen. So for our next steps, I invite you to attend our next scheduled networking events or technique sessions. You can find more information on our website or on LinkedIn. If you haven't followed us yet, please do so. And today, as a special gift for all of you for attending this session, Agora Insights, it's providing a 30% off on all IIBA endorsed masterclass bundles on ECBA, CCBA, and CBAP training certifications. You can use the promo code that you can see here, Hamilton 30, but please take into account that these will expire on May 13. So you can go ahead and do so until May 13. Again, thank you to all of you for attending the Hamilton Speaker Series session. Thank you, Deirdre, for being here tonight, for your valuable insights. And we'll look forward to seeing all of you again at our next event on June 2nd. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Just one quick thing. Sorry, Maria, I forgot to mention. Over May, I will be doing more blog posts and really short videos on this topic. So if anyone wants to get more information on this, just keep an eye out on our site. Be completely free, so there's no obligations. But if you are really interested in more information, just let us know, and we'll be sending out some comms to you on the kind of details. I've been trying to write this now for probably about 6 months and finally got there. So yeah, hopefully you'll benefit from all of that.
Perfect. I'm pretty sure we will. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll share with you the slides and the recording once we compile both of them.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Water. Thanks, Maria.
Thank you, Deirdre. This was very insightful, and I really love the way that you presented everything. Like, it was a lot of information, but in a way that was very easy to follow and to understand. And I should say that I have a couple of years of experience as a business analyst, but this gave me like some ideas on how to better frame the statement. So I really found it very valuable. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate
yes.
that.
All right. So do you have more events today?
No, I don't have any more.
Okay.
I had one obviously earlier, but yes, I'm going to have a coffee and I'm going to probably just relax a little bit and yeah, just catch up on all the emails and things I need to do. But yes, and thank you so much for hosting me. I really appreciate it. And we absolutely are going to provide more content on this. Like I said, it really has been my plan for some time now to get this done. So I'm actually looking forward to bringing it in, you know, some depth in May. But we'll definitely use this video as a kind of a starter, and then break it, maybe do it in a series of blog posts for each detail.
Of course, I will share with you the recording after it's saved in the cloud, and when you can, if you can share the slides, I will send the slides and the recording along with the promo code so that people can refer to it again.
Great.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so
Good
much.
stuff.
Nice to meet you
you
virtually, and
you
talk
too.
to you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.